So in the parashiyot that we're reading at the moment, we learn, as we mentioned the other day, we learn the concept of Arvut, of mutual responsibility. We spoke a couple of nights ago how Yehuda is the one who exemplifies this concept. That's why he was chosen to go down ahead to Goshen to establish the yeshiva there. And before, when he said to his father regarding Binyamin, and there we learn, the Gemara learns out this idea of Arvut, which is not just a nice idea, but is a bona fide halachic concept. We're all mutually responsible for one another, and the halachic implications are that every Jew is responsible for every other Jew fulfilling the mitzvot, and therefore, if I have already fulfilled the mitzvah, even though I've already fulfilled it, I can go and do it again if that's going to be to help somebody else to fulfill their mitzvah. So, for example, to the extent that even if somebody has already fulfilled the mitzvah, and they can go do it again, they can say the bracha again, even though they don't need it anymore, but for somebody else, for another Jew to fulfill it. It says the Gemara, Afal pi she'atza motzi. So, Rosh Hashanah is an example, Tkiyat Shofar, person was the Baal Tokea, or the person who can be a Baal Tokea, heard the shofar in shul. He goes, there is somebody else who needs who hasn't yet heard the shofar, hasn't fulfilled the mitzvah. They can go, they can be Tokea again. If he's blowing for other men who are obligated in the mitzvah, he can say the bracha again. It's better if the person who is now fulfilling the mitzvah can say the bracha themselves, but nonetheless, if they don't know how, so then they can say it again, because Kol Yisrael Arvim Zeh Bazeh, this concept of Arvut. Same thing by Mikra Megillah, and same thing for many other mitzvah. Maybe the most common application of this principle, comes up very often, comes up every week, is regarding Kiddush, right? Kiddush on Friday night. So first of all, a person can go and can make Kiddush numerous times for different people. You have people go around in hospitals, for example, people are unable to make Kiddush for themselves. You can have one person can go around 10, 15, 20 times, whatever it is, even though he's made Kiddush, he can make for other people again and again. How we fulfill the requirement of Kiddush for Makom Suda is another discussion we won't get into now. But more common, and this is Masim Shebachol Yom, Sim Shebachol Shavua. Take the following scenario. Husband goes to shul on Friday night. He davens Kabbalat Shabbat and Maariv in shul, comes home, and his wife stayed at home and she didn't daven Maariv. Now, the mitzvah of Kiddush learned out from the Torah, Zachor et Yom HaShabbat lekodsho. Part of the fulfillment of Zachor, of remembering Shabbat, is by marking it with Kiddush, the beginning of Shabbat. According to Rashi, Kiddush has to be over wine from the Torah. But according to most of the other Rishonim and most of the Mefarshim, Kiddush minat Torah is just by bidvarim, with words. So when we daven and we say Baruch Atah Hashem Mekadesh Shabbat, that fulfills the Doraita requirement of Kiddush. Come along Chachamim and say, no, there is a better way to fulfill Kiddush, not just with words, but alakos, together with wine as well. So we have a midrabanan, and we have a requirement that Kiddush needs to be over wine as well, not just enough with words. So a man goes to shul, he's now davened, and he has said, he's davened everything, he said, Baruch Atah Hashem, Mekadesh Shabbat. In that sense, he's fulfilled the biblical requirement. He now comes home, and he's still chayav to make Kiddush over a cost, midrabanan. The woman who stayed at home, who hasn't davened Maariv, and can come to shul if she wants, she can daven Maariv if she wants, but assume in this instance that she hasn't, so then she has not said Baruch Atah Hashem HaKadosh Shabbat. So she has not fulfilled that requirement. So she has now got a chiyuv deoraita for Kiddush. He has got a chiyuv derabanan for Kiddush. Can somebody who has a chiyuv derabanan be motzi somebody who has a chiyuv deoraita? Can somebody who has a lower level obligation fulfill the obligation on behalf of somebody who has a greater level obligation? So the simple answer is no. And this is why, for example, a katan would only be obligated in certain things, midrabanan, would not be able to fulfill the obligation for a gadol for whom it's a biblical requirement. So that would be the case. That's Friday night. That's with Kiddush, unless we invoke the principle of Arvut, right? And the principle of Arvut says that even if I'm not obligated at all, because I've already fulfilled my requirement, I've done the mitzvah, but I can go and I can do it again, and I can say it on behalf of somebody else, and I can go and I can make. So even if, never mind being mechuyav midrabanan, even if I've fulfilled Kiddush and I'm not mechuyav at all right now, I can go and do it for somebody else because of the principle of Arvut. Comes along the Dagul Mervava, And he says, wait a minute, not so simple. The Gomer of Avai is the Nodab Yehuda. It's his notes, commentaries on the Shulchan Aruch. He says the principle of Arvut does not apply equally to men and to women. It's based on a Rosh. We know that women are not obligated in all the mitzvot. There are many mitzvot men are obligated in, which women are not, right? Positive time-bound mitzvot. In fact, before that, we need to ask the question, why is a woman obligated in Kiddush at all? Because it is a positive time-bound mitzvah. The answer is that the exemption is from positive time-bound mitzvah, not from negative time-bound mitzvah. And since anybody who is obligated, we have Zachor and Shamor being the negative mitzvah regarding Shabbat, anybody who is obligated in the prohibitions, is obligated in the assays as well, Zachor and Shamor together, and therefore women are obligated in Kiddush, even though it is a positive time-bound mitzvah. But nonetheless, says the Gomer of Avai, that when it comes to Arvut, the principle that applies to men does not apply to women. And therefore, for the man to be able to say Kiddush and have fulfill the obligation for his wife as well, he would have to have in mind when he comes to Shul and when he davens that he is not fulfilling the obligation of Kiddush when he says that Kiddush b'dvarim, so that he would then still be obligated and on a Doraita level, and he can say it for everybody. That is the Dagumer of Avai. Rabbi Kenigsberg argues. Kenigsberg says no. He says Arvut applies, it's the same for men and for women. He says what the Rosh was talking about was that if you have a mitzvah which the woman is not obligated in, right? Somebody is not obligated in that mitzvah at all. So obviously there's no Arvut regarding that mitzvah. But if it's one of the other mitzvot which men and women are obligated in equally, you can have Arvut that can perform for a woman, and that's fine, no question. But the question is if we even need to go there. And the poskim discuss, is it so simple? Is it so straightforward to say that when one comes and davens and says, Baruch atah Hashem mekadesh Shabbat, that you have fulfilled the mitzvah of Kiddush d'oraita, on a d'oraita level? Magen Abraham says yes, based on the Rid as well, one of the Rishonim. But other Rishonim say no, it's not so simple for the following reason. We have, the Gemara tells us, Torah says, Zachor et Yom HaShabbat lekodsho. It also says, there are other mitzvot we have of remembrance. It says, Leman tizkor et Yom Tzemcha meretz Mitzrayim, in order you should remember when you left Egypt. And the Gemara says, Zachor and Tizkor, just as a Gezerah Shavah, just like we learn it by Shabbat, so too we learn it by Yetziat Mitzrayim. When one fulfills the mitzvah of Zachor et Yom HaShabbat with Kiddush, one needs to mention Yetziat Mitzrayim as well. And this is what we do. We say Zecher Yetziat Mitzrayim when we say Kiddush al Hayayin on Friday night. When we daven Yamidah in Shul, and we say Baruch atah Hashem mekadesh Shabbat, we don't mention Yetziat Mitzrayim. So based on that, Rishonim say you've not fulfilled the mitzvah at all. So the Biur Halacha discusses, he gives three possible answers to this question. He says, number one, it could be that the fact that you have to mention Yetziat Mitzrayim together with Kiddush, maybe that is just an asmachta ba'alma, maybe that is a din d'Rabbanan. So the din d'Oraita that of Kiddush you fulfilled nonetheless. That's possibility number one. Possibility number two, he says, during davening, maybe it doesn't have to be that you mention Yetziat Mitzrayim immediately together with the Kiddush. Maybe if you mention it just before, that is enough. And we've mentioned it before in Birkot Kriyat Shema, right? Birkot Kriyat Shema, Emet ve'emunah, speak about Yetziat Mitzrayim. You'll say, then you have a hefsek, because then you have Hashkiveinu. So the Gemara in Brachot says, no, the Hashkiveinu, together with the bracha before, is like a Geula Arichta. It's like we have a principle of Smichat Geula la Tfilah. We have to mention redemption before Tfilah, and that section is attached to the section before, and it's like one long section. Nonetheless, you still have a hefsek, because when do you get to the Kiddush? When you say Baruch atah Hashem mekadesh Shabbat, you have the first three brachot of Shemona Esrei, but the first three brachot of the Amidah beforehand. So Biur Halacha is in, he says Sarich Yun Gadol regarding that, because it does seem to be a hefsek, and it doesn't seem to work. And then he says a third suggestion. He says maybe the Kiddush doesn't start just with Baruch atah Hashem mekadesh Shabbat. It starts beforehand with Vashamra. So you've said, you mentioned Yetziat Mitzrayim in Emet ve'emunah, and then Hashkiveinu is an extension of that. And then you say Vashamra, which is the beginning of your Kiddush, and that's okay. People are looking at me, don't know what I'm talking about because we don't say it here. So that wouldn't help you, right? If you go according to Minhag HaGra, who says that saying Vashamru is going to be a hefsek between Geula and Tfilah, so we don't say it. That wouldn't that wouldn't apply. But that's the discussion in Biur why maybe either it's just a din drabanan, or maybe it is considered that we've mentioned Yetziat Mitzrayim together with Kiddush. So that's the first objection which is raised, and that's how he solves it. Second factor to consider why it might not be that a person has fulfilled a Kiddush Doraita when they daven in shul, because we have a principle, mitzvot shrichot kavanah. We fulfill a mitzvah, say machloket throughout Shas, but we paskin that mitzvot shrichot kavanah, a person needs to have intent when fulfilling a mitzvah. So when the person said, we would go and ask somebody, when you daven tonight in shul and you said, Baruch atah Hashem HaKadosh Shabbat, what did you have in mind? Which mitzvah were you trying to fulfill? I think very few people will turn around and say, if they learn them in, they might know where you're going, but they will say, I was davening, I was fulfilling tefillah, not that I was fulfilling kiddush. More than that, right? What is a person's kavanah stam? So there are those Rishonim who say that since Chachamim said it's not enough to do kiddush bidvarim, it's not enough to make kiddush just with words. It has to be over a course. So you only have in mind to fulfill the mitzvah of kiddush when you have the course. But before you have the course, you don't have in mind to fulfill the mitzvah of kiddush, and therefore that is not that. And there are some who go as far as to say, Chatam Sofer, for example, it's mashma from the Mishnah Brura as well, that one should have in mind not to fulfill the mitzvah of kiddush when you're davening, because the best way to fulfill it is with the course afterwards. The answer to that, what would the Magen Avraham say? Now, the answer would say that no, what Chachamim said, it's not that the kiddush over the course comes to replace the kiddush that you can do with words. It comes in addition, and this is mashma from the language of the Gemara as well, that you do kiddush on a doraita level when you say it in shul, and then you do kiddush drabanan when you come home and when you say with the course as well. So Lamaisa, at the end of the day, we have two different tracks, which we could explain. The minhag in Am Yisrael, and as it's been for many generations, the man comes to shul, davens, goes home and makes kiddush, right? So how can it be? And Lamaisa, the common practice is we assume that kiddush is good enough, and that he's motzi the chovah, his wife, and anybody else in the household, even though they may not have davened themselves. Either we could say due to the principle of Arvut, right, and then we would say the women are included in the principle of Arvut, or we would say, even if not, that it may be that because of intention or because of this juxtaposition together with Yetziat Mitzrayim, that one does not necessarily fulfill the mitzvah d'oraita of kiddush when you say it in shul.